everybody. Welcome to the Hallmarkies podcast. I'm so excited today to bring you another interview. We love talking to Hallmark writers, and today we have another chance to talk with a Hallmark writer. We're talking with writer Topher Payne today, and this is going to be really fun. I'm really thrilled. I'm Rachel, and Topher, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so what we like to do is to ask our guests to introduce yourself and tell us what inspired you to become a writer.
Well, I grew up in Mississippi, and I come from a family of very, very gifted storytellers. None of them were foolish enough to try to make a living at it, but that was how I learned my family history, is through stories. And I was raised in the Methodist Church, where everything I learned about kind of our way of being in the world was taught through parable. And so storytelling was just so steeped in the culture that I was raised in. I don't think that's unique to the South, but I think Southerners are particularly good at it.
Yeah.
And so growing up, whenever I was trying to make sense out of something, I tended to put it to paper. And I believe writing is an engine for teaching yourself empathy, teaching yourself compassion, and considering the perspective of somebody in a different pair of shoes. And that kind of naturally evolved into, as my questions started to get more complex, I wanted to take those questions out into the world. And that led me to the first stage of my career as a playwright. And I premiered my first play when I was 21.
Wow.
And then kept right on going.
That's really amazing. You first play at 21. That's impressive.
Yeah.
Was it just at your
It's
school?
all I knew how to do.
Or
No, I started professionally started as a technician in theater. And so I was working in electrics, building sets, painting sets, really anything that would let me do. And I did that for 2 years in Mississippi, starting when I was 17. And when I was 19, I came to Atlanta hoping to find my fortune in theater. And when you're 19 years old, you can believe that's possible. And then got mixed up with a really great group of storytellers here in town, and wanted to start telling my own stories. And I was surrounded with people who were telling me yes, which is how all amazing things happen,
Right.
And so my first play was, I actually went back and reread it a couple of years ago, and it charitably showed a lot of promise.
Yeah.
But I tell students now, how do you write a good script? You write a bad script and make it better.
Right.
And just keep working at it, because as I have found, editing a work is much harder than generating the first draft of it.
Yeah.
And so you just power through that first draft and recognize, the first draft is always going to be, just a complete unmitigated disappointment. And so you get that out of the way, and then you keep going.
Yeah, that's like the gift of NaNoWriMo is just kind of, at least for me, is that just getting that first idea out on some kind of paper and just blah, get it out there, and then
but that's precisely it. And and now with exercises like that simply prioritize your right to write.
Yeah.
Because I didn't receive any formal training in this. I was a teenager that showed up in a building where they tell stories and asked if I could play.
Yeah.
And certainly in the early years of my career, that was something I struggled with, that there were people who, from my perception, it came easier to, or they were more profound. They had more lived in experience or whatever excuse you want to tell yourself to believe you don't deserve what you want.
Yeah.
And getting on the other side of that and just recognizing I absolutely have the right to write, as we all do.
Yeah.
And stories are the engine that generate compassion.
Yeah. And you never know where
Which kind of naturally led me to writing the sort of movies I write now, you know?
Yeah. And you never know, where your journey will take you. My sister, she, long wanted to be kind of more of a fantasy type of author, young adult kind of author. And she's ended up writing picture stories, picture books. And that's where she's found kind of a niche. And so, life's kind of, it's interesting. But I like what you said about growing up on the South. It reminds me of an interview with author Lee Smith, where she said that the great thing about the South is not that they can tell a good story, but they can make anything into a story.
A good story.
Anything that happens. Yeah, she was saying, she's like, and if a woman is not wearing a very nice dress, it's bless her heart.
Bless her heart.
Bless
but
her
then
heart.
her hair looks so good. But
Yeah,
her hair
that's right.
looks so good. You always find the compliment you can couch within.
That's really funny. So how did you end up writing for Hallmark? How did that happen?
It was much to my surprise. I had a play that went off Broadway in 2015 called Perfect Arrangement, and it was that perfect confluence of events. You know, you never know who's going to see your work, how it's going to reach people, and when the right people will be in the right room at the right time. And with that production, we got some really solid reviews out of it and started getting some positive attention. And that led to me developing a relationship with who would eventually become my manager, Scott Halley. And he brought me out to LA to do a series of meetings just to get to know people and let them get to know me. I hadn't written in the medium before, but I love telling stories and would love to have the chance to reach a new audience. So we did a lot of meetings on that trip, and I, thanks to my mother and my big sister, had seen a lot of Hallmark Christmas movies. Every time I go home to Mississippi, it's what's playing in the background the entire time I'm there. And I asked Scott if he could set me up with a conversation with Hallmark. I was really, really interested, more than anything else, to just have a conversation with the people who decide what stories are told there about what their priorities are as storytellers. I think because I had such low expectations coming out for the trip, I had not previously expected to be moving into television at that particular moment in my career. And I just saw it as an opportunity to sit down with people and get some legit answers on why they tell the stories they tell. And I was Scott's first client to request a meeting at Hallmark, which I thought was nuts, because if you're looking for work, they make a lot of movies. And
that's true.
And then that conversation at Hallmark ended up being the most just special experience of that trip. Because we talked about Hallmark movies and we talked about our plays, but we spent most of the time talking about the Hallmark audience and what their goals are in telling stories to that audience. And there was a lot of crossover with what Hallmark's priorities were and what my priorities are as a storyteller. Going back again to that idea of stories being a chance to build empathy and build compassion.
Yeah.
And so it was just a really great conversation.
Yeah.
And so this was in the spring of 2016. And my plan was I was going to spend the summer learning how to write for television. And I figure I taught myself how to write plays. I can teach myself how to write screenplays. And so I said I would be available to take a project in the fall if that was something that was interesting to them. And 2 weeks later, they needed a writer to step in and do a rewrite on an existing piece that they already had in development. And opportunity knocked. And they said, we know you said you weren't available till September, but if you want to start today, you can. And that became My Summer Prince, my first Hallmark movie.
Uh-huh.
And so I taught myself how to write it as I was writing it.
Nice. So had you heard of had you watched them? Did you know what the brand kind of was?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Again, thanks to Mama and my big sister Shannon, who were big fans. And my sister has 2 sons, both under age 13, and Hallmark is a really good thing to have on TV in the background that you as a parent don't have to check in on.
Right.
And so when we're all gathering for the holidays and you just kind of have that background noise, and then like people perch on the sofa and watch for 20 minutes, but then they get sucked in and suddenly the whole family's watching a movie, that's Hallmark at their house.
Yeah.
And so I had been sucked into many a Lacey Chabert movie before I came in. And I could definitely see that, there were some story beats that I could see were consistent in their storytelling. There were, the things that people jokingly call the Hallmark formula, and I call the Hallmark recipe. And so I could see what was going on there, and that was really where I wanted to get to the root of the people making the decisions about these stories, and specifically why the stories are told the way they're told, and what opportunities we could have to innovate within that.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Interesting. So, yeah, I know what you mean about them being kind of background movies. Even I, who love them and talk about them all the time, like I'll have them on sometimes. It's just as background to just kind of relax and just, I don't know, there's just something really sweet and really pleasant about them. And I don't know, they make you like, even I feel like even their flaws are somehow sort of charming usually.
Yeah, because there are quirks to the storytelling that there are consistent story beats that we see again and again.
Yeah.
And what becomes a delightful challenge for me as a writer is knowing, there's a couple of things. You have 85 minutes to tell this story when you cut out commercials. And so I need to, as a writer, introduce you to the world these characters inhabit, introduce you to the problem, develop, that first encounter of the guy and the girl, and then tell you a complete, satisfying story of courtship over the course of 85 minutes.
Yeah.
And we're going to be taking 8 breaks in the midst of that, where I've got to leave you with something that then will bring you back after the commercial break.
Yeah.
And so it does lend itself to a certain recipe for success.
Yeah.
These are the established kind of touchstones that you can hit that's going to get you where you need to get to give you room to tell your story.
Yeah.
So in the first 20 minutes, the following things need to happen, or you're not going to get where you need to go. And so when we see repetition of that, that's kind of the logic behind it, is I've got to cover a certain amount of ground so that I can tell you the story that's really important for me to tell.
Yeah. Well, and people act like formula is a bad thing. And I disagree. I think that uninspired formula is a bad thing, but I think that sometimes a formula can actually give a writer and a director a little bit more sort of room to kind of play where they don't have to reinvent the wheel with every movie. And
That's exactly it.
yeah, yeah.
And within that, like, knowing that I am going to be doing that, how can I still surprise you?
Right.
I had a wonderful producer I'm working with again on another project on A Gift to Remember. And we knew that we were going to be hitting a lot of those expected story beats and then deliberately, with great intention, finding ways to turn those expectations ever so slightly in a different direction, which I think is immensely satisfying.
All right. Yeah, I mean, that's why I personally think like, for instance, the Marvel movies are better, in my opinion, than the Star Wars movies, because I feel like with the Star Wars movies, it's just been kind of left to the director to sort of figure it out for each one. One's a war movie, one's a, whatever. And that's hard to do. Whereas like the Marvel movies, they got it. They got the plan. Now Taika Waititi can come in and do his little flair to the formula, and Joss Whedon can do his little flair to the formula, and whatever it might be. And so it makes for a really satisfying experience because you know what you're sitting down to watch, and at least in my opinion, and they know how to execute it well. They're not trying to do anything other than what they're doing. And that's
I think that's
Hallmark.
Yeah. I think that's an incredible example, because you look at two movies like Captain America, the Winter Soldier versus Black Panther, which were both incredibly satisfying movies, but existing in very different storytelling spaces, even as they're hitting a lot of the same beats. And, I mean, you can look at Shakespeare plays and see the consistent story beats that are hit. And it doesn't make each one in isolation any less satisfying. I find what really makes the difference between a story well told or not is this group of storytellers trying to communicate something that matters to them. And that is absolutely achievable within the Hallmark recipe. It kind of is the Hallmark recipe.
Well, and it's so hard too with romantic stories, is that so much of it is almost outside of anyone's control, because it's just an intangible of chemistry. Because you can have, just like in dating, you can have like somebody on paper that is perfect for you and that you should get along with great, and then you go on a couple dates with them and it's like, don't like, this doesn't work at all. It's like, what? And that's how it sometimes can be with romantic comedies. It's like all the pieces, these people, this should work, but I'm just not feeling it. Like, it's just not. And that must be very frustrating, because how can you plan for that? You can't. All you can do is you try your best to put people together that you think will have that chemistry, and then hope it works, because that's a huge part of these movies working.
And I think, again, it goes back to, do I believe that what the story is telling me is important to this character? Do I believe? Love to come in on female characters with the issue of likability, which is a horrible, horrible trigger for me as a writer. I don't care if my female lead is likable. What I care about is, do you care about her? Because we are all achingly human and flawed. And in storytelling, you want to see a character that you care about make mistakes along the way, learn from those mistakes, and grow. And that means that at the beginning of our story, then the central characters that we're focusing on are going to be a little flawed, because they have room to grow. And I love exploring that. And I also think that serves as an assist for the actors playing the roles, because it gives them something to hang their hat on. She starts here, she ends here. Okay, now I know what I'm doing with this. You know what I mean?
Yes. Well, here's my theory on that, is that I think everybody's trying to be Pride and Prejudice, because, of course, it's Pride and Prejudice, But the thing that people forget about Pride and Prejudice is that Lizzie and Darcy are both shown to be beloved by everybody else in their life. They just don't happen to like each other. And I
Yeah.
think that that's what's missing a lot of times in this, is that you'll have people that are just hateful and you just don't like them because they're
Yeah.
not nice people. And so you're not really rooting for them. So then when they get together at the end, you're just like, whatever.
Eh.
And I mean, I've long said that I think that every romantic comedy is either based on Taming of the Shrew or Pride and Prejudice. It's either some kind of
I
it's some kind of bet or gimmick, kind of a thing, like got to write an
Yep.
article, got to whatever, like Taming of the Shrew, or they're trying to be Pride and Prejudice where they just, they hate each other, but they really are meant for each other. And I think with Taming of the Shrew, you have to be either really funny to make that kind of gimmick premise pay off.
Yep.
Like Greek Wedding, I think is a great one where it was just a real gimmick, but it was so funny that it worked for me. Or to make that one work, there's so many of them that don't work though, that are trying that, some kind of bet or some kind of thing like that where it's just like, and
right. And there's, and there's that vein of people that are trying to write a Hepburn and Tracy crackling little unexpected romance, and they just end up writing two miserable people that are like sniping at each other the whole time. I'm like, well, I guess I think you deserve each other, but not in the way you intended.
You're like, oh, yeah, exactly. You have to make good use of your best friend character. It's a very important character. Very. And that's what's so great about, like, in my opinion, my favorite writer in the whole world is Nora Ephron. She was just amazing to me. I know she had her flops, but I just love her writing. And if you think about something like You've Got Mail, which so many people try to copy and do terribly, is that both Joe and Kathleen both had friends, BFF friends, to talk to. And so you got to know them, and they got to know each other through the emails that you got to hear. So you got to hear their true self, and they just didn't get along as business people, which is totally understandable, but that's not who they really are. And
exactly.
And so I just feel like 99% of the people that try to do You've Got Mail totally miss, and you could, you say Shop Around the Corner as well, but I don't know, they just totally miss that core of they are defining themselves by their jobs for the very beginning of the movie. That's who they are. And then by the end, they realize that's not who they are. And the person that they were when they were talking to each other in the chat room, that's who they really are. And
exactly.
Yeah. So, and plus, I mean, just Nora Ephron's hilarious. She's so funny.
Oh my gosh.
And I just love her writing so much. But anyway, yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that I think that, yes, because it's predictable is not necessarily a flaw. Because they're unlikable is not necessarily a flaw. All that's saying, I think when people say it's unlikable is because they don't have that, because they're kept the antagonist sort of in that thing too long.
We are not given the opportunity to forge an emotional connection.
Yeah.
And if you're not given the opportunity to forge an emotional investment, and care about what they care about, even if they're making terrible choices. I mean, good Lord, think of like the age of the anti-hero on television, where you can have characters like Don Draper or, Glenn Close on Damages, just real monsters. But they give us the opportunity to understand the explanation behind the approach, even if we as an audience are saying, please don't make that choice. But then we're also really satisfied when they do. And as long as I'm invested in the reasons behind it, as long as I feel like I understand this person as a complete human, which is where the best friend character or, the like sympathetic boss or somebody's got a great mom, when you've got that opportunity to present a more complex portrait of who this person is, well, then you can sign up for it because you care.
Yeah. A great example of that in romantic comedy world is Love and Friendship with Stillman.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
she's terrible. She's a terrible human being. But like you completely understand where she's coming from. And she's literally making every single person in her life better and making better choices than all of them would ever make. So you can't really be that mad at her. Because she's.
Have you seen Russian Doll on Netflix yet?
No, I've heard really good things, but I haven't seen it.
Oh my God, it's so good. But what's amazing is in the midst of this very, very high concept show, at the core of it, it's about Natasha Lyonne's character just trying to forge an authentic connection with another person. And how much she gets in her own way in the process of that. And she's reliving the same night of her life over and over and over until she's actually able to break through the same mistakes she's been making her entire adult life. And what makes it awesome isn't the high concept or all that Netflix money they throw at it, but all that helps. What makes it awesome, what makes you keep coming back is that you are so invested in her getting this right, And I love that. I love a story that engages me that way.
That's really cool. Well, so you said your first movie, My Summer Prince. So it was basically a complete rewrite on that, basically, that you did, or?
Yeah, I did a complete rewrite on that, and then came in on Broadcasting Christmas with the same producer and director immediately after we finished My Summer Prince.
Oh, wow.
And
My Summer Prince.
No, go ahead.
My Summer Prince, did you get to be on set for that at all or anything like that, or was it?
Yes, I did.
You
I even have a little cameo in it. If you watch, there's an elevator scene, and the tourist in the elevator is your screenwriter. And
well, you have been in our neck of the woods then, because I'm from Utah, so.
It's so beautiful out there. And I tell you, Utah in the summer doesn't get nearly enough credit. It is beautiful out there in the summer. And I got to be on set for that with Taylor Cole and Jack Turner and Marina Sirtis, and Lauren Holly and I are direct message buddies on Twitter now, constantly shooting back and forth. And it was the best possible set of circumstances. Peter Sullivan, my director on that film, and my producers knew that this was my first time at bat, and their patience and generosity of spirit in that process, knowing we have an experienced storyteller who is just learning a new way to tell stories.
Right.
And their guidance through that process, I owe them immensely. But that ended up becoming kind of the defining characteristic of most of my professional relationship with Hallmark is they choose good people to work with, who are there for the right reasons. And everybody is lifting everybody else up. And so that was an amazing set to be on, and such a tremendous first experience.
That's really, really great. Yeah, I haven't heard anything different from all these interviews. Not that I doubt someone would be coming on our podcast and be like, oh, it was horrible, but still, everything I've read and everything in the era of Me Too and all that stuff, the fact that we haven't had, too many stories about, women being treated badly on Hallmark or anything like that. Like it's all been like pretty positive. I don't know. there's a few little things here and there, but for the most part, I've been so impressed with everybody's experience. Seems to be really positive, and that makes me happy. And it's really cool that you got to work with Peter Sullivan twice there in
Yeah.
that to start you off.
I mean, and that guy, like,
Yeah.
I mean, if you want an education on how a Hallmark movie works, Peter is a great man to sit across from.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, and then I signed for Broadcasting Christmas the day after My Summer Prince premiered.
Mm.
And so I went from never having written a movie to having written 2 movies inside of a year. And then with Melissa and Dean and Jack A., who is one of the funniest people I have ever been in the same room with.
Yes.
And it was just, we shoot fast. I think, I don't feel like I'm telling a tale out of school there. These movies are made fast.
Yes.
And from inception of the script to final broadcast edit, it is unparalleled on television how quickly they are able to generate these things. And it's because they have very, very experienced people who know what they're doing, and they keep a joyful set.
Yeah.
And I know from my experience in doing theater that if you do not run a positive room, then you're never going to get the product you're looking for. Not really. Nobody wants to feel like working with you is something they survived. And I know that there are plenty of people that, we put in that category of tortured geniuses who are worth the trouble.
Yeah.
And I think that mindset is exactly what leads us to situations like the Me Too movement.
Right.
When you start making allowances for artists that do not prioritize being good people, then once we make room for that, there will be consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a great blessing in my life that so far, knock the closest piece of wood, I haven't encountered a set where we make those kinds of allowances.
Right.
And I haven't encountered leadership that believes in that idea. Because I think that's a recipe for getting messy real quick.
Yeah, I agree. So do you have any differences in sort of your mindset of writing a Christmas movie like Broadcasting Christmas versus a non-Christmas movie?
All right, I'm going to be completely candid. The Christmas movies are more of a creative challenge than the non-Christmas movies.
Uh-huh.
And the reason for that is because there are only so many things people do at Christmas.
Yeah.
And they have made 200 Christmas movies.
Right.
And I say that as a writer who is in process on a Christmas movie right now while it's 75 degrees outside. But because, as I said, I'm always looking for how can I innovate? How can I delight the audience with the unexpected? With a summer film, you have the vast landscape of all summer possibilities. And when you are doing a Christmas story, try to think of something that another writer hasn't already beat you to the punch on.
Yeah.
And so it is absolutely more of a challenge. And I think I can be a real pain in the butt for my network executives while I am in process saying, but I've already seen that. I've already seen that. And I want to find something else. And they are fully supportive of me finding something else, but they would also like for me to finish the script.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I have to say, last year, I honestly think Lifetime did a little bit better job of finding something else. Like they had their as far as just thinking outside the box a little bit. Like they had their Nutcracker Come Alive movie. They had the girl waking up in the Irish Christmas village. That's perfect.
Hmm.
They had a fairly interesting take on Christmas Carol. I thought just some of the different things that they did that were just a little creative, and so that was that was fun. Where I felt like Hallmark was kind of most of them were sort of workplace romances in some way or another, which is fine. Planning a party, that was a big thing last year. Was planning the party.
Well, and I tell you, but the other side of that is um, because, of course, we were seeing um, some significant new storytelling elements coming into Hallmark last year, like with Christmas Everlasting. And
Yeah,
that's not just what the cast looked like, but also the content of the film.
yeah,
Um,
it's
but
true.
one of the things that um, because this goes back to that very first conversation that I had at their office, um, is this audience has given you their trust and their time,
Yeah,
and you have to tread carefully with that. You have to respect that responsibility. And part of what that means is knowing when to move the needle forward and introduce new storytelling elements, or really going outside the box and trying something bold, and when you you need to honor the audience's
yeah,
expectations when they turn on the Hallmark Channel, and that's a very fine line,
yeah,
and it's a tremendous responsibility to carry. I think it's very distinctive for me because I came to Hallmark in 2016, which is a very specific year in American culture.
yeah,
Um, and I have continued to tell these stories as the dialogue within communities has become a lot more fraught, and
yeah,
um, and people have gotten a little more uh, tentative about the unfamiliar. Um, People are looking for things that reinforce a sense of goodness and to a certain extent predictability.
yeah,
People want to know that something can be dependable,
yeah,
and it's a curious thing being a writer for an institution like Hallmark at that time, because you want to, that you have the opportunity to promote a healing effect on your audience, and allow people a sense of calm in a time when it is desperately needed,
yeah.
while also looking for ways to advance storytelling and move the needle forward and get them to consider new possibilities. Um, and the only thing I can say, just from my own perspective, is that's something I am aware of every time I sit down to write, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I appreciate that. And I think that's completely true. And giving something that everybody can find some joy in. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
Christmas is supposed to be all about anyway. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's really funny. I mean, we've interviewed tons of writers, and a couple of them are Jewish writers. They're trying to find, that are trying to find all this. What's the next thing that I can find out, talk about to write on as far as Christmas, which is a really funny dynamic. Can't imagine what's going on. But anyway, yeah, I really enjoyed broadcasting Christmas. I think that one's a lot of fun. I think you did a nice job with that. And then we loved A Gift to Remember. It was one of our favorites. If not, it was Amber, I believe, favorite of that year. And I was wondering, were you at all kind of thinking about while you were sleeping at all as kind of a sort of an inspiration at all, or no, or because it felt like it was
Well,
kind
that
of
one,
a little bit.
yeah, that one was based on a book. And,
Okay.
um, and so my first step in that process, that was my first literary adaptation as a playwright or as a screenwriter.
Okay.
So it was my first opportunity to work with someone else's pre-existing content. And so I started at the core with Melissa Hill's book, which is delightful, and Melissa and I are Twitter friends too. But and so I felt a tremendous responsibility to honor the spirit of the author's work while recognizing I'm taking, a 300-page book and turning it into an 85-minute movie.
Okay.
And so with that, there's only so much of the specific plot elements of her novel that can transfer over because we don't have time.
Sure.
And so taking the structure of her story and then finding a way to give myself permission to make it my own story, so that I'm not just working in service of somebody else's book. And so the basic concept of how Darcy and Aiden meet and then the journey that Darcy goes on tracks from the book to the film. And then I had the challenge of, I've got a guy with a head injury who's in the hospital for 45 minutes of my movie.
I mean, it doesn't hurt that that's Peter Forte, though. I mean, if there's going to be somebody who's going to capture your interest for 45 minutes in a hospital, that's a good choice.
My husband says he looks like Prince Eric from Little Mermaid, and now that's all I see.
He does look like, oh my gosh, that's so true.
If they ever do the live action, the man has a gig, I swear.
We need to tell Lin Miranda and all the people about that. They're making the version. Yeah.
I don't know if he can sing and dance, but dang it, he's got time to learn. Come on.
That's right. They don't care about that in the Disney remakes anyway.
Clearly.
So, yeah. But yeah, I mean, so you're working with him again, though, obviously in the sequel, but in Roman Love as well, right? With Peter Porter.
Yes, they're shooting Roman Love right now.
Oh my gosh, she's your good luck charm.
She really is. And that was such a stroke of good luck for us. I didn't even realize Peter was up for consideration for that film. I knew with the project that I'm currently working on that I was writing for his voice again. But having him come in on Roman Love is just a real bonus because I think he's such a delightful performer and he's so endearing. And dang if he's not the most likable human being in real life too.
Sure.
I haven't found the reason to hate him yet, but believe me, I'm still looking. I mean, it would help if he just weren't so darn ugly, but
right. So is that, do you know at all, can you say, is that going to be like are they doing the Rome movies in summer, or do you have any idea?
I never want to scoop my boss on anything, but what I can say is I am currently shooting a movie called Roman Love, based on the book Roman Love by Anita Hughes. Peter Forte and Italia Ricci are our stars in that. Right. And it takes place in Italy in the summer. And that's all I can tell you.
All right. Very good. Yeah, I know that. I know that. I'm not going to.
I'll get a tweet from Michelle so fast.
I mean, I know that Julie Sherman-Wolf is also working on a Rome movie, so I know it's a thing. So I'm waiting for that season, but.
It seems like it would stand to reason that we may have a series of movies about exciting European holidays this summer. I'm just guessing.
Yes.
I'm just guessing.
So excited. All right. Very good. You did a good job there. So
thanks.
You're writing the sequel to Get to Remember as we speak, right? Or
just for fun.
Yes. Well, let me give you some advice. on
Okay, go for it.
writing Hallmark sequels.
Please.
A lot of times I feel like they have the couple together and then they kind of
Mm-hmm.
don't know what to do next. Like people want a sequel,
Mm-hmm.
but do they really want a sequel? And so their choice is to make things really dark and weird, and all of a sudden they have all of this conflict that's like too real. Like it
You
might
are
be
speaking to my
real.
heart right now. You are speaking
Yeah.
so to my heart right now.
Yeah. I think that the Perfect Bride sequel did it just about as good as I think you can do it, where all of their conflict was all that came up was there was never a second where you believed that they were ever going to split up or they were ever going to, there was never any like giving back the ring or anything like that. It was natural conflict that's fine, but it's a tricky thing. But yeah, all of a sudden these sequels,
Here's the thing I love about Gift to Remember. It's all summed up in Mrs. Henley's line, helping others reveals the best version of ourselves.
yeah,
And that, more than anything else, as a writer, is what I was trying to communicate in that script, that Darcy experiences an awakening of confidence and purpose through helping Aiden. And
yeah,
and so if in the first film our focus was Aiden is the one who is clearly in need, and Darcy is responsible in that story for seeing him to the other side of that, then the thing that I need to see in a sequel to understand how this relationship is equitable is, all right, now I've got to see Aiden step it up. He doesn't have a head injury this time. He remembers his last name. He is good to go. And then beyond that,
yeah.
there's Mrs. Henley,
Yes.
who was such a wonderful supporting influence in the first film, but she was very much working in support of her friend.
Sure.
And so in that idea of the joy of giving, then I'm looking to flip that as well. Where my question coming in on the sequel, which again, nothing's been announced. I'm just writing it for fun, sure.
Right.
Was, okay, this time, how can we support Darcy and how can we support Mrs. Henley?
Yeah. Well,
And
see, because what romance novels do for sequels is they have, because you've already got the couple together in the first book, so it's hard to have a sequel with them falling in love again. And so
right.
what they do is they have that couple will be in the next book, but really the focus is on a different couple who's also in the same town. So you'll have like the Fool's Gold series, like, or one of these different sort of series about, it'll be all about the romances of a baseball team or the romances of a I don't know, just whatever group a family. A lot of times it'll be like the Walker Saga or whatever it might be, and so or you'll have it all be about cowboys on a ranch. In one story, will be about and so if I feel like for these Hallmark sequels, instead of going all of a sudden all dark and putting all this weird conflict on our couple, it would be better, I think, if the couple was there and we got an arc for them. Maybe they're planning a party or whatever, and then you have new couple coming in that they're kind of mentoring, or matchmaking or something fun, and so you get that. So that's what I think would
and what I found immensely satisfying with Gift to Remember, both as the book and then in the eventual film, is getting a holiday story that has a satisfying little bit of mystery to be solved.
Yeah.
And so that's engaging a completely different set of senses.
Yeah, that's true.
And I wanted in the follow-up, Darcy and Aiden are a couple in the beginning, and I can swear to you they will be a couple in the end, and they are a couple all the way through. And so, spoiler alert, we are not setting up like some false love triangle or weird fight. But, and maybe because I was working on the pitch for that as I was preparing for my own wedding, I want to know them as a couple. I want to know them as a team. And I want to see them finding the solution to whatever kind of puzzle needs to be solved in this one. I want to see how they do that together, because that makes me root for them as a couple. And that's the difference for me in the first story and the second. The first is how we met, and the second is who we are.
Yeah.
And I don't have to threaten to break them up to make you care, you know?
Yes. You're nailing it. I love it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we go, we have our we do at the end of interviews, we call it the Teen Beat questions. These are just some fun.
Oh, I get to do the TV questions. I'm so excited.
These are just our fun, silly questions. And so the Amber found in an issue of Teen Beat. So here we go. The first one, what is the best ice cream flavor?
The best ice cream flavor is Jenny's Ice Cream in Atlanta does Fluffer Nutter.
Ooh.
And it is a marshmallow ice cream with a peanut butter swirl. And it is the best dang thing you ever tasted.
That sounds
and
so
it's
good.
the reason we all suffer from obesity in the South.
Well earned, well deserved. It's worth it. All right.
We earn it. We earn it, dang it.
Okay, number 2, favorite color.
My favorite color is red.
Oh, very on brand. That's very good. Okay, what music are you listening to right now? Are you into?
The thing I'm loving right now is Jamie Cullum. He's a Scottish singer-songwriter, and I need something when I'm writing that puts me in the headspace of the tone of the piece that I'm working on. And Jamie Cullum at the piano is so perfect for writing a Hallmark movie. And then I don't have to listen to Christmas music in March.
Why not? I mean, come on.
Because I do not live alone and there are other people's things to consider.
All right. So what's your go-to date night food?
Pizza. It's always going to be pizza if I'm the one choosing, which is why it's better if my husband chooses. Otherwise, you are getting pizza.
That's funny. All right. What is your go-to date night activity to go out and do?
We love a movie night. We love a movie night. And they've got, the fancy theater here where you've got like the recliner seats and they bring drinks to your seats and treat you like a VIP. And that's a really great night out. I love that. That's fun. We're kind of boring.
The only risk of those kinds of theaters is that I sometimes fight the sleepy problem. And if I'm too comfortable, it's almost a problem. Like I am going to fall asleep. But yeah, there's movies that put me to sleep, and there's movies where I fall asleep. It's
where you just sleep.
Scenario because I'm so tired. But okay, so dogs or cats?
Oh God, I have a dog and a cat. I couldn't possibly choose between my love for each of them, but in terms of tolerable behavior, I am much more of a dog person and my husband is more of a cat person.
Oh, see, and you get along. That's the perfect combination then. Okay, so beaches or mountains?
Mountains.
Okay, good.
I am Scottish and sunburn very easily, so the beach just isn't that interesting to me.
All right. Suit and tie or sweats?
Oh, please, sweats. Please, please.
Okay.
If I am putting on a suit, it means that I am having to live up to somebody else's expectations
Yeah.
because I don't put on a suit to go to the dang grocery store. Like, clearly it's not my choice. You know?
Yeah. And then a tie. That's ooh.
Uh, um,
Yes. Okay. Your favorite holiday?
my favorite holiday, um, probably Halloween, um,
Mm.
because Daniel, I mean, I always liked Halloween, but then I met Daniel, who
Uh-huh.
loves Halloween and taught me how to do Halloween right. So, like, this past year, we moved up to the suburbs last May. And so this is our first time living together in a proper neighborhood. And
Uh-huh.
we were the house that gave away full-size candy bars.
Oh,
So,
nice.
like, we were kings of the neighborhood that night.
Yes, you were. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. I really like Halloween too. I really enjoy planning my costume. And I've always said, once I finally meet Mr. Sunshine, if he doesn't agree to do couples costumes, I will be so furious because I've been looking forward to that for my whole life.
And I guess, I mean, the thing I love about it, like, of course, everybody has their own Christmas traditions,
Right.
but Halloween, like, is open to so many different interpretations.
Yeah.
And it's so much fun to see what people's individual take is on what scares you. That's a really broad
Yeah.
spectrum. And you'll be pleased to know that this last year, he went as Jaws and I went as Quint, and we had a real good
Oh,
time.
I'm so proud of you. Very good. All right. Last question, very difficult, and you can pick one of your own, no judgment. What is your favorite Hallmark movie?
You are so mean. Um, I mean, I feel like if I don't say one of my own, I'm not really earning my paycheck. But at the same time, oh golly, um, because of because of the fact that it literally changed my life, I have to say My Summer Prince.
Oh, that's cool. Really good.
And because I made some really good friends out of
Yeah.
that as well. And that was just before Taylor Cole's moment happened.
Yeah.
And because now she is a Hallmark queen. And
Yeah.
like watching her trajectory and watching the audience fall in love with her the same way we did on set has just been immensely gratifying. It's
Yeah.
really great to see good people get the appreciation they deserve. And I love having been in the early stages of that.
Well,
Um,
and
but yeah,
it's just Utah. I mean, that's why it's your favorite.
yeah. And it's
That's
Utah,
why.
and it's Utah, which again, guys, you got to see Utah in
Yeah.
warm
Yeah.
weather. It's
Yeah.
really amazing.
Yeah. It's really great. Well, you have been a delight. This has been so much fun to talk with you. And I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. And where can people find you on social media, all that fun stuff?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at Topher Payne. That's TOPHERPAYNE. You'll get to hear any of the gossip I'm allowed to reveal about upcoming film projects. You'll also hear about my stage projects, some of which may be very unexpected if you're only familiar with my Hallmark work. But I've got plays happening all over the country, so I would sure love for people to see it. And you can go to topherpayne.com and find out about everything I ever wrote.
Great. We'll have that all in the description section. People definitely should check that out. And thanks again. This was really, really fun. And
You are the best. This was great.
well, I will have to definitely have you on again because this was really fun. So thanks.
Thank you. I would love to come back and talk about movies I can't talk about right now.
Yes, well, we'll definitely do it for sure. Really like to thank Topher for coming on the podcast. That was so much fun. He is just the best, and we had a great time talking with him. So let us know what you think about the things we talked about as far as rom-coms and writing and the different movies, all that fun stuff. definitely share with us your thoughts. We would really appreciate it. So Easter is coming up, and we have a really exciting new sponsor for the podcast that we are working with Russell Stover Chocolates. And they have a really cool new feature where you can build your own box of chocolates on their website for your friends and family and have the perfect Easter gift. And what could be better than that for the Hallmarkie in your life? And if you're interested, check out our link of hallmarkiespodcast.com/chocolate, and you'll really enjoy building your own box of chocolates. So thanks so much to Topher again. And if you want to follow me, you can follow me at Rachel's Reviews on iTunes and YouTube. I really appreciate that. And make sure you're following the podcast at Hallmarkies Pod all over social media. We try to post something every single day. We love hearing your feedback and your comments on the things that we're talking about. It's so much fun. And if you're listening on iTunes, if you can leave your ratings and reviews, we really appreciate it. And if you're listening on YouTube, please give us your thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. That would be great. So thanks so much. And we will talk to you all later this week, where we are doing our Merry Madness bracket with Alonzo Giraldi and Emma from the Hallmark. And so you'll really enjoy that. So thanks so much, and we'll talk to you all later. Bye.